Welcome back to College Football Addiction. I want to talk about UF a little bit today. And listen, I'll address the elephant in the room right off the bat in today's video presented by BetUS. Yes, that is a Bobby Bowden signed football behind me. Those are FSU team-issued cleats on the other side. That is my national championship ticket from Pasadena, and that is a Bobby Bowden hat over there as well. I like Florida State, but I try to be pretty objective when I talk about different teams on this national channel, on College Football Addiction. And I do have some takes on Billy Napier. We've had Allie on several times. I'm sure you know her from a peek inside Gators football. And then we had Dan Thompson on the day that they announced the vote of confidence when Scott Strickland came out and gave that. And we've tried to be pretty objective on this. Gator fans may know that I troll you on Twitter, or I like when you lose games. That's how rivalries work. You should want your rivals to lose games. It's good for you objectively when it comes to recruiting. The whole strength of schedule, both teams being 11-0 when they meet the last Saturday after Thanksgiving, that's not really an important thing anymore with the 12-team playoff, and really hasn't mattered for either team for a long time, 20 years or so now, trying to get to national championships before the BCS. And so I don't even think that really matters too much, but if that's your one argument, then I guess I can buy it. I just don't think it's really that big of a deal anymore. And so, yeah, I don't love UF. I don't necessarily like when they win games, but I think I can be objective. Now, on Napier specifically, did they maybe do the right thing by keeping him, by giving him that vote of confidence? I want to hear your thoughts down in the comments. Has the LSU game kind of changed things for you some? Has the way they played in that Georgia game, and really the way they've played outside of Texas, which I think they were kind of a dead team walking with Lagway out of it. Now, I don't think they win it even if Lagway's there, and I don't think I'm being a massive hater by saying that, but has the way they've played in the second half of the year, or really since that Texas A&M game, right? And I know that the Tennessee stumble stunk too for UF. But has the way they've largely played since then kind of changed your mind on thinking that he could maybe turn this thing around? I have a two-part answer I'll give in just a minute, but I do want to know your thoughts. Are you somewhat more optimistic after the last several weeks, right? Did maybe showing a little bit of patience, maybe is that a good thing, UF fans? Now, I know you still hate Scott Strickland, and I know that his tenure there at UF has been marred with controversy and mostly bad football and just things that you're not happy with. And I know there's ongoing investigations with one of his coaches, and I won't really opine on that because I don't know all the facts or all the details in it. But what I think Strickland did, and I understand all the stuff with the president stepping down and having an interim, and Scott knowing that if he fires Napier, that's probably his job too. I understand all of that. But what I really think that their decision was based on, and why they made the decision to wait another year, was really just punting the decision until next year. I think there are several reasons why that was probably smart. Number one, I think UF is still playing incredibly hard. I mentioned the team that I like, right? I mentioned where Florida State's at. And listen, I know you're tired of moral victories, UF fans, after several years of what you consider very bad football and under the standard football at Florida. However, the one thing I will say, the massive hat tip that I'll give to Florida right now is that their players still care. And when Florida's players could have absolutely quit on this season after that A&M game, maybe the Lagway coming in is what kept the fan base and the players and everybody from quitting. But I don't think so. I think the culture there is actually pretty strong. And you've not seen guys, I know there are a few that have rumors, but you've not seen guys just mass quit or mass jump in the portal like maybe you expected after a 1-2 start against two teams that just kind of dominated you there in the swamp in Miami and A&M. And I think the buy-in at UF is still really strong. And I think that's a big deal on keeping a coach. You've got a lot of players that still care. Meanwhile, up the road in Tallahassee, that team quit early in the year. Now, being 1-6, 1-5, yeah, that'll do that to you in Tallahassee. But I do think the buy-in is a big deal. Let's talk about the rest of that. But first, I will give a little love to BetUS. Again, YouTube 150 if you want to sign up, 150% sign-up bonus if you use our code there at betus.com on your first deposit. Your next two deposits are 125%. All of that up to $2,000. Go give BetUS some love. Florida's playing Ole Miss this weekend in the Swamp. They are a dog. Can they get another upset? Go bet it over there. I also think that when you're UF, you're looking at this and you're saying, man, are there any really great candidates out there? When UF would have needed to make a decision, it looked like Lane was kind of tanking. They had lost to LSU, lost a big game there, lost to Kentucky. It looked like they were kind of stumbling. Now they've turned it around, and beating Georgia maybe puts Lane back up there on a lot of lists. But the questions around Lane Miss, when the decision would have needed to be made, were certainly there. There's no great slam dunk candidate that you're just going to go out and get and turn things around. I also think that the young talent on this team, on UF's roster, is really good. Guys like Lagway, obviously. No true freshman in the country is doing what he's done. I know Rayola's had some ups and downs, but nobody's doing quite what Lagway's doing. He looks like the best true freshman, and I don't know if there's another true freshman that's even comparable to him. Again, Rayola's probably the closest. Jaden Baugh, another young, talented guy that is making a difference for this UF roster. Guys like McCray and others that are on this team right now, the young secondary guys that are having to step in due to injury, all look like they're going to be really talented in the years coming. And maybe the decision to keep Napier was more about keeping a roster together as opposed to just blowing things up. Now, you still may fire Napier after next year. If they only go 6-6, if they don't make a bowl, if somehow they regress just a little bit, then I do think you're likely to move on from Napier. But Lagway, with 2 years on campus, is infinitely more likely to stay for his last season than to potentially leave. Could he still have left after this year? Yes. Could he still have stayed after this year, firing Napier? Absolutely. But having him spend 2 years on campus and being entrenched in that Florida culture is probably a good reason to think that he would stay for a third year, even if you let go of Napier. And let me tell you, if you keep Lagway, let's say you fire Napier next year and you keep Lagway going into 2026 with a new coach, let's say it's a slam dunk hire, you're probably going to keep most of that roster too. You're probably going to keep most of that roster because they understand how good that player is and how good that guy is. And maybe by keeping Napier another year, you keep the bulk of that roster together going into 2026. We've seen that with different teams. We've seen that with different programs where a coach may leave and you're going to have some attrition, but if the main guys stick together, the guys like McCray and Baugh and Lagway and others stay together, you're more likely to retain more of that roster. And so punting that decision may make sense from that perspective. You've also seen the positive uptick just in a week or two in recruiting as well for Napier and UF. They've got a lot of positive momentum in recruiting right now. They had Solomon Thomas on campus, Florida State commit. They had Jamie French on campus, longtime Texas commit. And now you're recruiting a couple of 5-stars that you have a legitimate chance with. Do I think they flip both Thomas and French? Probably not, but I don't think that's outside of the realm of possibilities. Obviously, the French connections with VB3 and Tramel Jones, who they did just flip from Florida State, are very important. And they could very well flip one or both of those guys. Now, again, I don't know that I'm betting on that. I don't know that I'm saying that that's an absolute lock to happen, but I do think that that's a help. And that vote of confidence from Strickland seemed to have not only energized the team, but also energized their recruiting efforts. And we all know that the talent is the most important thing on any college football team. Now, all of this doesn't necessarily mean that Napier works out. It does not mean that he is going to be their coach there in 3 years. But the path to him working out, the path to him making this a long-term thing, more than just the 3 years we all kind of thought after the A&M game, is certainly there. He's a really good recruiter, and I think he's assembled a pretty good staff of coaches. I think their coaching staff is very good. It's not top to bottom elite, or it's not one of the best in the country by any means, but it's a good staff of good recruiters and good coaches. The big knock on him seems to have always been the in-game decision-making at UF, which at times, we can be very frank with this. I've given enough praise to where I think I can be objectively honest here and say it at times has been horrible. It was really bad against A&M. It was really bad against Miami. It was really bad against Tennessee. However, the team played really bad in those first two games as well. It's been bad going back. I think it was bad against Arkansas. I think it was bad against Missouri last year. I think it was bad against Florida State 2 years ago in a game in Doak that they were in and very competitive in. So that's got to be cleaned up. That's got to get better. But better talent is going to override some of those faults. That's been the big knock on Mario forever as well. And talent at times will eventually override that. Miami's in a situation where they can win their next 3 games. 3 games they will probably be a favorite in and make the playoff. Could that same thing happen for Florida? I think it's a little bit longer of a shot next year and the year after, but with enough talent, it won't matter. This class, this recruiting class, will be very interesting for UF. At this point, I would say that UF probably finishes top 20. That's not the UF standard. That's not closing the gap with the Georgias and the elites in the SEC and in college football. But if they can push that up just a little bit, if they can get that up closer to the top 12 or even somehow in the top 10, then I think they'll be in a much better spot to have that happen a little faster. But the decision to keep Napier, though I don't necessarily still think that it was the right decision long term, in the short term, it very well may have been the right decision. Now, I'm not sold on UF completely. I do think LSU has their warts. They have their faults. They, at times, dominated the stat box against Florida. But the team is still bought in. The team still makes enough plays to win the game. The team still cares about what's going on. And for that, I don't necessarily think it was the right decision long-term to keep Napier, but in the short term, UF fans, will you agree with me that it may have been what was right? It may have been what was right for 2024 and 25. I don't think that any coach comes in here with their 2025 schedule and has a great year outside of maybe Billy Napier because of the talent that's going to stay on this roster when you think about Lagway, Ball, and others. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Again, try to be very objective with this. I have been a huge Napier detractor, saying from the beginning of the year that I did not think he would make it through this year. Obviously, he is going to make it through this year, and I want to know your thoughts. Going forward, what are you thinking of Billy Napier right now? Again, appreciate you tuning in. Appreciate BetUS for their support. We will talk to you soon here on College Football Addiction.